Okay, welcome. All right, so to set the mood for this panel, I'd like all of you to close your eyes and think about your favorite ambient sound. Let's say it's thunderstorms. To fall asleep, and you wake up in the morning for Alexa to tell you what the weather forecast is, and then you're fresh or bleary-eyed, one of the two. You walk over to your closet to see what am I going to wear today given the weather, and you look at there, and some of us go, I have nothing to wear. And so you ask one of your favorite brand bots, order me a green khaki because I don't think I have anything else to wear. And off you go during your day, and Alexa reminds you it's your significant other's birthday tomorrow. And as usual, you have procrastinated. And very quickly on your commute over, you talk to the Tiffany bot, and you order a beautiful watch and make it in time for your significant other's birthday, live happily ever after until the next time that you have to order another gift. Does it sound like a dream? Open your eyes. Because it's not. It's actually available today. And we have on our panel some of those brilliant minds that came up with a lot of those designs. And we're going to be peeking a little bit into the world and figuring out how they're doing user acquisition for users like you and I to build some of those experiences. So I'm going to kick off introductions really quickly. I'm Jody Bolani. I'm Managing Director for Fresh River AI. We dream up, design, and build custom enterprise-grade bots with a focus on emotional intelligence. I'm going to start here.
I'm Kirk Owen. I work with XAPPmedia. We're a conversational AI solution provider working with companies like Toyota, Progressive, and PepsiCo. Prior to joining Zap, I was a senior business development manager up at Amazon, the Alexa team, where I worked creating skills in the media, games, and banking area.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christian Brucculeri. I'm the CEO of Snaps. We're a New York-based platform for conversational AI.
Stephen Keefer, senior software developer for Accuweather and focused on artificial intelligence and chatbots.
Nick Schwab, founder of Invoked Apps, creator of the ambient sound series on Alexa and Google Assistant.
Hopefully that made sense with a little opener. All right, so we're going to kick it off. And up until this morning, we've been talking about, okay, you're going to build these bots, build the experiences. How do you acquire users? How do you discover them? Everything from children to us adults. And with that, I mean, the assumption is that when you begin the design work, as much as the BBC team had done, I'm sure a lot of you do that, is you think about your target user and you figure out what experience you want to build, what content you may want them to explore, discover, or what you want them to transact. So with that, I'm going to start here and say, how do you go discover and acquire users, which seems to be the key challenge question here. So let's start right over there. You want to go first?
Oh, gosh.
No pressure.
Yeah, this is the question that everybody wants answered, right? I don't think there's any golden bullet to this question. For me, I think it's building great content and making sure that you're naming your voice apps in a way that people are just going to naturally discover. You know, in the case of me, I built rain sounds, thunderstorm sounds, things that people just naturally search for, not necessarily a branded experience. I think that is the stepping stone of where we need to start off with these voice applications and chatbots.
One of the benefits that we have is brand recognition right off the start. Everybody knows Accuweather. For better or for worse, weather is very fickle. It can be right or wrong, but for the most part, we're pretty reliable. So just having that benefit allows users to search for us, knowing that brand name. So I think that's one of the big benefits that we have.
Very helpful, yeah.
For the most part, I'd say that's probably our biggest benefit right now.
Question?
Yeah, I like to use, I think Fred Wilson cut it first, the kind of owned, earned, and paid media strategies to deliver discovery. I think we see the most success when we get our partners to integrate into their existing customer journey. Sort of obvious, but you can integrate that discovery point in some non-obvious ways. And so we've seen a lot of our brand partners really innovate on that side, like, you know, obviously using their site, but also using physical presence. We've got a lot of CPG brands that do things like, you know, in-aisle call to actions, QR codes, short text codes, things like that. So, you know, when our partners spend enough time thinking about discovery, and they break it up into those 3 buckets, and they kind of have some tactics for each of those buckets they tend to do fairly well.
Yeah, I think we like to think about trust and facility, and I think part of the trust issue is knowing your brand and knowing your customers and knowing the questions that you're really qualified to answer, and being able to think through as you work on your skill, you work on your action, what are those things that consumers are going to ask that will lead to discovery of your product, and what are those questions that you can really answer in a way that is going to be trusted by the consumer. The facility is just the actual machinations of the skill and the action that you build. And this is where an iterative approach, a testing center approach is so important, because I think everybody who's done this knows that a priori you can't get it right. And so you do the best, you iterate, you test, and then you launch. We like to think about launch being day one, and then you just look at the data and you improve. But starting with those questions that you can answer, that you have trust around, and then building that facility to do those and answer those questions well.
Do you find competing for users on there? I mean, some of the, sorry, but we got to get a little controversial here. So what do you say, Stephen? Let's do you with the Accuweather.
I would say competition is very good. It's fun. It's one of the things that I strive for. I do a lot of research, looking at other companies, we'll say, and how they do it, and what can we do to improve it. Not so much copying the idea, but like just massaging it a little bit, I guess you could say. And then there's so much that weather can do for you that it's just an open-ended, because weather affects everything. So if you see that weather is integrated with fashion or something, you can take it a step further, and now you can integrate it with your sports schedule or something else. Just take that idea. There's so much more that you can do with it. So competition is really good, and there's a lot of weather skills out there on all the different platforms. So
Yeah, systems win, right? What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, competition is good. It's healthy, right? Unless somebody's copying you, then it sucks. But hey, it happens. Yeah, there's plenty of ambient sound clones out there. Gosh, I think that, just like I said, building great content, making people love your voice app and making them keep coming back. I have like a 50% retention rate after week 1, which I think is pretty good. But it's all about the content and making sure people get to the content really easily, really quickly.
You're being a little modest. What are your Alexa reviews right now?
The average rating right now, I think, is like 4.8 stars across over 50 skills. On a monthly basis, I have about 3 million users. On a daily basis, it's about 300,000.
So you're owning that space right now, would be safe to say?
I hope so.
Christian, what do you think?
You're like the Zynga of voice skills. When you IPO, I'll say I knew you when.
yes,
That's awesome. So our partners, almost all of them we're fortunate to have partners that have great brand recognition. They're competing with each other in many instances. But mostly, I think when we think about competition, we're typically competing for their resources and for their other communication channels. So we're often competing with, just buying paid media on Instagram, or sending out one more email, or using their old, kind of SMS marketing technology. And so we typically compete for, to get our brand partners, customers into our systems by having to be more performant. And so that's kind of the way that I think about competing for users with our business.
Kirk, you've got a unique perspective because you used to work for Amazon Alexa, right, on the team?
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going to go with this question. Is I think that brands need to be thinking about competing with the platforms. Amazon's a great company. They're a bare-knuckle competitor. And I think brands have a risk here, and that, we talk to our clients a lot about this, that there's the notion of a 1P versus a 3P experience. And one of Jeff Bezos' many great quotes is, "Your margin is my opportunity." And you think about brands having bigger margins than maybe what Jeff is willing to take at Amazon. And so training your customers to ask for your skill, to ask for your brand, to make sure that part of what your message out to the market is that there's something special that you'll get from talking to my skill or talking to my brand that you won't get from having generic asks. And so I think when you think about what you're doing on these platforms or any platform that comes forward, is think about that there's kind of a 1P experience that you want to be ahead of and you want to be better than, because that 1P experience and the data that comes with that goes to the Amazons and the Google is a chance for them to potentially intermediate your product.
So as you guys select channels for either your own companies or your clients, how do they compare? What works and what doesn't? And is it different for each one of your clients?
I'd like to start with that, and I think this was talked about earlier, but one of the things that we're finding, and we have a cross-platform tool, the One Voice AI platform, which allows us to do essentially skills and actions simultaneously. But today, in the United States at least, Amazon has a better install base than Google does. I think if you look at the devices as opposed to like Assistant on Android devices or iOS. So if you look at that, but there's a lighter data feed that comes from Amazon, and so the data feed you get from Google is much more robust. And so someone said earlier, you can use that as a proxy. So I think taking a cross Google and Alexa approach is really the best way, just at a data level, so that the data you're getting is going to be robust enough for you to do the work, especially at an optimization level, that you'd be hard pressed to do with the Alexa data alone.
I'll jump in on that because with our Accuweather, we don't only just have voice, we also have text-based through Messenger and other text SMS platforms, RCS platforms, and so forth. So when we're building out our feature set, we're looking at how does this play on voice? How does this play on a screen-only interface? And there's a lot of role-playing that goes on. We'll have the conversations between our team where somebody will play as the bot, somebody will be the skill or the action or whatever you want to call it, and somebody will be a regular user. And they'll sit there and ask the question, and then if the role-playing bot sits there and goes, I don't know, that becomes an immediate red flag. We write it on the board. How does this look on a screen? How do we convey this through voice? For the Echo Dot that doesn't have a screen, that same feature has to be able to display on a screen as well, screen only. So we run into a lot of issues how to convey a screen in voice and how to convey a screen as voice, like the vice versa of it. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot of feature parity across both Alexa and Google Assistant. I think one really important thing for all developers to do who are working with these voice platforms is use the platform's native abilities to improve discovery. So in Alexa's case, it's can fulfill intent request. I have a skill that gets like 600,000 of those every week. If I were to total those up across all my skills, it's going to be millions and millions. So just helping the platform know that your skill can handle content is of great help to you and to consumers. And the same with Google Assistant. There's implicit discovery that you can set up to actually help Assistant learn what your action can handle.
Christian?
Yeah, I'm between the voice and text only. I think, over the past 12 months, we're really focused on text and text-based experiences because the scale has really been there for a lot of our customers. And we work with, most of our customers are global kind of multi-market brands. And so if we can't get to any level of scale that, it's got to get into like millions of monthly actives in order for it to even show up as a bullet point on a deck somewhere in those organizations. And so we haven't, I didn't meet Nick before today, so I didn't know that I could do that on voice. But now that I do, maybe we'll get our partners over there a little bit more. Yeah. You guys probably get a ton.
We get a lot of
weather and voice
suggestions.
is perfect.
Yeah, we get a lot of suggestions for, especially around the holidays. What's the Christmas forecast? What's the Easter forecast? And we'll get those implicitly handed off to us. So that is a major benefit with the Google.
Yeah, weather's an awesome fit.
Every once in a while, I get one of your requests. Ask rain sounds, will it rain today? Doesn't work, by the way.
Yeah, we struggle with, you mentioned Tiffany earlier. They're a partner of ours, and they.
I know. I studied your company.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Oh, got it. Okay.
All plugged.
That wasn't just a coincidence.
No, it was not.
Jody, you're on it. Yeah, hard to shop for a ring on a voice scale. I think we had a lot of CPG brands. They did a lot of recipes.
Just say Big Rock. Biggest rock you got.
You just get a price and you say yes and it shows up. Yeah, exactly. We found, I mean, Nike Jordan's a customer, and we've worked with them on a lot of voice experiences, but so much of that brand is visual that we've, frankly, like we've struggled to translate a lot of it. We've done a lot of CPG stuff on voice where, you know, recipe invocations, right, for Jameson and a few other, you know, kind of beverage brands. Recipes are great things in the kitchen, but we haven't like nailed the use case that we've been able to kind of get scale for our customers yet. So that's probably a failure of imagination on our part, but haven't gotten there yet. So I would say the text-based for sure. And then as it relates to all the different messaging channels, I think you know, if you want to include native web on there, I'd say that probably works with the most scale, followed by, you know, SMS, and then, you know, you see Messenger really kind of coming up. But it really depends on the use cases that you're supporting and the way that your customer partner is going to integrate with the customer journey.
Now let's talk about attribution, because it's all about, did you hit the numbers that you were expecting, right? Because I think when you're on this journey for voice, what are you trying to change, right? It's a new digital channel to solve some old business problems, right? Acquire customers, improve the experience, so on and so forth, God forbid, revenue and margins. But how do you think about attribution as to what works, what doesn't work, and then tracking those metrics and performance?
Yeah, attribution is really, really hard. The way I think about it is maybe you set up a special intent where a user has to say a very specific thing that maybe they heard in a radio ad or a banner ad, where you can know for sure, basically, because they said that, they reached your content because of that ad. Aside from that, I don't really know how to do that. I mean, I see traffic bumps whenever there's an article written about me by, you know, any major media company. But aside from that, it's really hard to pinpoint where it comes from.
I would agree with everything he just said. I mean, there's some things that we can do, like within text platform, within Messenger, and that you get ads, so you get the referral tag and things like that. One thing that we found is giving attribution as to where it came from or how they got there, whether it's from the discovery tab or if it was an implicit trigger or can fulfill. That we can track, so that I think we can attribute a little bit more. But if it's coming from Twitter, if it's coming from something else, the referral tag within the different links, the deep links that you can provide, that's one way that we do it, but not all platforms support that at this point.
Christian?
We built
Have you lost your voice?
must have been something I said.
Here.
Thanks. Yeah, we've got attribution tracking in our platform. So for us, most of the time we kind of know where the traffic is coming from. It's also, you know, again, depending on where our partners are integrating it tends to be relatively obvious. Like the use cases are a little bit different. If someone's doing they're signing up for an in-stock alert on site, yeah, you know, it's fairly easy to create that segment and see where it's coming from. So we think about attribution a lot. We built that referral tracker early in our journey, and it's really helped us go back to our partners and say, you know, these channels are really working, and these need some work.
Yeah, I think just add on what everybody else has said. It's difficult. It's one of the hardest things right now, and it's probably one of the most important things that the platforms continue to need to work on to really get to the point where you have the kind of rational business like you have in the game business where I come from. So, I mean, today I think part of the reality is you don't run a lot of campaigns simultaneously. So if you have a big bump, it's probably because you've done one thing that had some results.
Actually, since we have the Chief Product Officer of Dashbot here, it might be a little bit something to think about. You know, how do you create a system where if you put Dashbot at your analytics platform, right, you have all your trackers, because I know we worked on a project together, one of my last clients. It would be fantastic to be able to trace all the way through, right, with all the touch points and call to action. So that's awesome.
Yeah, just one more thing on what Kirk said. You know, running one test at a time, that's exactly what I've done. It's a slow process, but that's the only thing right now that will work every single time.
Yeah, big fan of A/B testing especially in this platform, because some things you'll find a certain group will they'll like, and then another group will just not interact with you at all, and that's an immediate. So one at a time, and A/B testing is very huge.
So do you study cohorts of, you know, your target audience, their behaviors, et cetera? How much time do you spend on that? Because that all relates to whether you're succeeding there, right? Do you guys spend some time thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, we spend a ton of time on that, and we try to get our partners to spend more time on it, but they're like, so again, I think a lot of our product support has been around things like attribution tracking and then segment builders and funnel analysis, and so a lot of what our customers are doing on our platform is seeing if they're setting goals and then seeing if they're actually hitting those over time and seeing where drop-off rates are and then optimizing for those. So a lot of times, like, we'll put an experience out and the goal is going to be a purchase, or it's going to be a purchase, or it's going to be a purchase. There might be one or two other use cases, but I think generally it's like those. And so the nice thing about that, the elegant thing about that is, like, once you have that goal, you can just continue to optimize towards that goal, continue to run A/B tests towards that goal, figure out where people are dropping off in the funnel, try to figure out why, keep going at the goal. So it keeps life relatively simple for us. I'd say the other goal is actually like deflection or service line deflection. And so we do things like CSAT, and we've got a few other post-session follow-ups to see if we're actually answering questions correctly. And I think on that side, the metrics are way looser, and we're kind of co-defining them with a lot of our customers. Like, when we started out, we used to talk about containment rates, the number of people that didn't, get handed off to an agent, and then very quickly realized, like, that's not always a good thing, right? And so finding the cohorts of users that, like, should have been handed off earlier, but instead, like, just ended up in this dead end with a bot, which is a terrible experience. And so we've been working a lot to kind of define the goals on the CX side of the world and make sure that we're being precise in our responses to customer inquiries. And that's a little bit harder to do than the commerce side. I think I just went on a tangent, but.
That's all right. It's brilliant minds. We're exploring your brain.
Yeah, the thing I noticed when I was working up at Amazon, and this is mostly in the game space, which is why I was doing like the second half of my time up there, was that as the in-scale purchase began to roll out, you could get some really interesting cohort data, because you could see how people over time, especially if you're in like a subscription model like what Nick has, you can see how different cohorts come in and what their drop-off rate, and if you change the offering or change the pricing, or there was a lot of work just to make the user flow really smooth and really easy to compare those cohorts prior and afterwards. So I think if you have the point where you've got a product that allows for in-scale purchase, then there's a lot of really interesting cohort analysis you can do within that and with the data that Amazon provides to you.
Yeah, kind of on that note, so a little bit about the user journey as they use one of my skills. The first thing they'll do is they'll come to the skill and they'll kind of be told what the skill can do and a few sounds that they might like to enjoy. And then as they continue to use the skill will actually learn what other sounds they might like based on their preferences before and based on users like them, what they've picked. And then on that note, what you can see from ISPs, I have a few thousand subscribers through ISPs, and the conversion rate, it's about typical to app stores, 2%, 3%, somewhere around there. But one thing that really moved the needle for me was simply saying that you get a free trial in the very first message that the user hears in that upsell. That bumped up my conversion rate by about 0.5%.
Free is so good, no? Free is always good. We'll all
Free's
take
great.
free. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. When you think about the strategy of the type of bot that you want to deploy, is there a difference in your thinking between a chatbot versus voice? How do you guys go about thinking about that? Anyone? Raise your hand.
Well, I can speak, like I was talking about it earlier, since we actually will target both platforms, there is a lot of role playing, because on a text screen, you may use shorthand. You may say T-storms, but when you're having a voice conversation and I just said T-storms, that sounded so strange. I'm not going to say you can expect T-storms tonight. You're going to expect thunderstorms, but you may read it as T-storms on the screen. So our text output and our speak output are similar, but there's a lot of post-processing that goes into it to change the words around so that what you see will fit in that little window, but what you hear is more pleasant for the ear. That's one of the biggest things that we encounter when you're targeting both platforms.
I'll put on my Amazon hat, and I think one of the great pieces that have made Amazon the company it is this notion from taking the customer and working backwards. And there's, that's something they talk about, and you see operationally within inside of all the organizations at Amazon that they constantly have the voice of the customer. And I think to the extent you can look back and you can see what's the most delightful, most frictionless, most engaging journey that you can offer, and recognizing that can move across platforms. It can move across bot to voice to human, and back maybe to a bot. So I think if you really focus rather on the system, or rather than on the technology, the platform, but focus with the customer first and put yourself in their shoes and see how you delight them, how do you engage them, how do you give them a frictionless experience that really moves the needle for them, and then put the technology in place to support that vision.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've only had one or two customers where the voice experiences and text experience were even close to the same. Simon Properties is a pretty big partner of ours. That use case for voice and for text is fairly similar, right? You're going to the mall, you want to know if there's any promotions, you want to know the hours, you want to know if the stores are open. It's basically a structured data question. So that one was relatively similar, but most of our experiences are shopping based. There's some visual component to it, and so we really, when our customers are deploying on both platforms, they're designing two different experiences, and the analytics, everything is it's all separate on our platform. So
real quick, yes, no. How many of you actually work with psychologists? Or because AI is all about, there's philosophy involved, there's psychology involved, there's linguistic involved. How many of you actually tap into any of that talent when you're designing? Just yes, no.
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 Yeah.
Audience, anyone, any of your companies actually involving those disciplines in your design process? Very cool. Very cool. I think that's important, because if we don't understand how us humans interact with this interface that's coming to us, I think we're going to lose. And there's a lot of sucky bots that are out there, and I think that's one of the reasons. I think we really need to understand how we function as humans. All right, let's switch gears. You want to say something?
Yeah, so I can't really talk onto the whole chatbot thing because I don't really build chatbots. I build voice apps. But I think that looking at it in a binary way is kind of outdated now because we have multimodal experiences. So we should be looking at it as, does your app work with voice? Does it work with voice and displays, or does it work via chat? So don't just look at it in a binary way.
Sure, no, that makes sense. Just given all your experiences collectively, right? What do you think are best practices when you think about building either chatbots or voice bots, and you're thinking about the user? Like, let's do top three, just the top three.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try something new.
I like test and iterate. I think it's such a hard medium to work in, and it's so hard to get right just through thought exercises, designing. You've got to get something out there, put it in people's hands, and just test and test and test. And I think that's the only way that you're really going to delight people, is to spend a lot of time on iteration and testing.
Your happy path is a lie.
Bots are not mobile apps, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what you think is your happy path, I can pretty much guarantee you is not the happy path. People are going to say way different things. In terms of synonyms that I have for different sounds, I have like 1,000 different synonyms. You can mix sounds together, so there's got to be like millions and millions of ways that you could actually tell my app to play two different sounds at the same time.
One of the fun things that I've done is I will user test with adults, but user test with kids, especially if you have a conversation-based app where you're leading up to a question at the end, because you will get some of the most random things coming out that do not answer that question from a kid, and that'll just show you how to handle that broken path.
That's a good point.
I guess we come at this from the opposite direction, in that we don't even talk to customers until they have a use case that they're willing to commit to, like an actual defined user goal that they're trying to achieve, because we put a lot out in the beginning, in the early side of this, that no one really knew what the goal was or what they were trying to get out of it, and I think for our customers who are generally Fortune 1000 businesses, in order for us to deliver value and deliver impact, we need them to commit to value that they're going to be giving to these users and business goals that they're trying to get out of it. And so we actually start with the goal in mind, and then we work our way backwards to try to achieve that goal.
Another poll question. How many of you use crowdsource testing?
We do.
Yes.
Some.
Never.
Audience, crowdsource testing. Is it part of your testing strategy? Hands up. It's a growing trend, and it's huge. Because if you think about the human natural language, think about accents and pronunciations, and even within the US, we all speak differently. Imagine going global. So I think that's a huge field that I think it's about to explode. I think there will not be a choice but to include crowdsource testing. Let's see if we have enough time. I think we have a few more minutes. So adoption success factors, all the way from design to implementation to deployment to push, top 3 adoption from what, and experimentation, failure is all part of it, right? What do you think you have learned as being the top adoption success factors?
I'll start with that one. I think it's the, again, what we say is launches day one, is that the notion that you're going to put your best foot forward, but recognizing that that's just that. It's the first step. And so doing as much as you can early on, but then committing, both at a resource level and throughout the organization, that this is something that you're going to have to put more and more time into. You get a good data feed, you can look at this and you're going to optimize it. But I think setting the expectation that you're going to set it and forget it, you'll fail. You've got to commit to launching, to iterate, to optimizing, to improving, to smoothing, to reducing friction. And sometimes you got to start over again if you missed it.
Anyone else? Any thoughts?
Yeah, kind of more on what Kirk said. One thing that I do is I give my users a way to contact me in various different ways. So one thing they can do is email me for support. If they have a feature request, sound request, I actually have a website where they can specifically request a sound. One thing I do is I look at Dashbot's slot values that come in, so I can see which sounds I don't have that maybe I need to add. And just looking at user reviews, people will write very honest feedback there. Take it to heart.
Yeah, those are the ones that are really committed, right? You love those. They're your, what do they call them? Influencers, your top, right? They love you.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask users to leave reviews too, because they certainly will.
Yeah, we actually request feedback within our app after a certain amount of queries of certain types. We'll ask, how do you feel about this response? And some very interesting feedback will come back, some very positive, some not even close to the mark, but every piece of feedback helps.
Sure does. Christian?
We're trying to get adoption from 2 stakeholders. One is our customers, and the other, the end users. And I think when we marry up on a use case and a user experience that we're all driving at, that tends to get everybody aligned on what we're trying to achieve, both at the end user, customer level, at the brand level, and internally at our company. And so we have found that locking into those early in the process really, really helps.
Yeah, I mean, this is a roadmap. I was telling someone earlier, the way I think bots are, they're like toddlers. They have a long way to go, and they have to go through the teenage years too. So it's not a one and done. As the BBC team was pointing out, it's a roadmap that you have to map out, and you have to be committed to it. All right, so I think we're ready for some questions.
Hi. So you just mentioned requesting feedback and reviews from your users, and what are the best ways that you found to not only elicit that, but then to analyze it at scale? Because you're talking about, in some cases, free-form responses.
Within the Google Assistant platform, when you're provided the full response. So within the Alexa platform, it's a little bit more challenging because you don't get that full response. But within Google, we'll actually ask the user, were you happy with that? And if they say yes, then we just assume that's a positive feedback. But if they say no, then we'll prompt them, would you like to tell us why? And if they say no, for the most part, they'll come back and tell us why. And with that full response, we then will capture that, and then we database it. And then we run a little sentiment analysis on it on a weekly basis, going through, collecting all the new stuff, seeing, hey, this was really good feedback. Because people will actually give us positive feedback along the way as well. So we'll analyze that sentiment and see if something is like below a 10%, that's a big red flag, and we'll look at that immediately. Where then you get into the 40 and 50% or later in the week kind of thing. But database it all and then run sentiment analysis. More data will help you out.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if you don't have the technical capacity or team to be able to do that, because that is an investment, which I really admire. If you don't have the ability to do that, then take advantage of Dashbot, or even just reading your reviews on Amazon or Google's website, just on a daily basis. Make 10 minutes for it. Yeah, that's all I got.
Any other questions?
This question is really for Stephen, but also for anyone else's customers or brands. How much value does Accuweather see in their bots compared to their flagship app? Or is it more of a marketing channel? And if they don't see as much value, what would make Accuweather's bots and voice assistants more valuable?
Accuweather, I can say right now that Accuweather sees the voice first in the chat platform, voice first for the most part, being a sole provider, like a major driving force, to the point of we're integrating it into our applications. So you will not only be able to access your weather information through a direct query, but you will also be able to navigate. So like one of the problems with a lot of applications is navigation. UX is, a lot of people spend a lot of time on UX, how to make it fluent to go from one spot to another point in the app. And if you're not familiar with it, just asking for it will be able to navigate you. That's a big benefit. So we are dedicating a lot of resources to integrating our bot, our interface, our system. We'll use that terminology now. Integrating our system into the flagship application, so it'll work within the applications that way as well.
I think another way maybe of looking at that question is just thinking about the difference between the interaction you get between a chatbot and a voice assistant. And I think someone earlier talked about this, that one of the wonderful things about voice is it's so wide open. That makes it hard, but it's also just a great way to understand how your customer's thinking about your products, the questions they have in a completely unguided, unscripted way. So, chatbots probably drive a lot more traffic today because they're just they're more established. But the understanding and the insights that you can gain from voice is a really important part when you're thinking about both of those.
Yeah, I'd say results and scale, right, are the two things that make people care more and more. And if you get initial results, they'll put more scale in, and then if you can continue to scale up those results, then you will continue to get more and more time at the central table, right? And so I think, we've been deflecting service volume by 50, 60, 70% for some of the social teams we work with, which for them allows them to switch from being on defense to going on offense, right? They can work on stories and Instagram and proactively closing the loop with other with their customers. I think a lot of our customers get excited about having something that's always on, that can always be responsive. And so I think like service volume deflection, also improvements in mobile conversion are huge. Engagement, great reviews are great. I think you can keep the evangelical journey going with great feedback, but eventually you have to deliver business impact. And if you're not delivering business impact and it's not going to scale, then you're just kind of keeping the visionary thing going for a while. And so we take a pretty hard line on trying to drive business impact as quickly as possible and pushing to get as much scale as we can early. And there's a little bit of chicken or the egg, right? It's like if you don't have anybody in it, you're not going to really drive the results. So it's it's a journey for sure.
Other questions?
Yeah, it's about content, Nick. So you said, in a way I picked this one, that good content is synonymous to a successful business. And to your point, Kirk, as you invest more in content, you feel sort of worried about your content being attractive to others. So at one point, at what depths would you feel that, hey, I need to talk to these platforms to give me a guarantee that, hey, you're not going to steal my content, or even you can't think of such a guarantee?
I don't think that guarantee will ever exist, to be honest. Um, yeah. I mean, competition is good at the end of the day. Sure, these platforms have an advantage if they wanted to just start doing whatever you're doing, but I think as developers, as companies, we have a responsibility to make consumers' lives better. And maybe we are the end game for that, or maybe we're just a stepping stone on that path.